Hello and welcome to Continental Prime here on News Central Television, reaching you from Lagos, Nigeria's economic capital. I'm Sulaiman. Our related headlines for this hour. More than 70 civil society groups call for the suspension of Nigeria's Twitter ban. UN officials call on Malian leaders to work together to address the crisis in the country. Egyptian court upholds death sentences against 12 senior members of the Muslim Brotherhood. Details shortly. Well, the news begins in Nigeria, where about 70 civil society organizations have called on the federal government to reverse the ban on Twitter and withdraw the threat to prosecute anyone using the app in Nigeria. The groups, in a statement jointly signed on Monday, condemned the action of the federal government, describing it as unlawful. The groups also condemned the directive by the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, where it asked all broadcast stations to deactivate their Twitter accounts. They called on the international community, including the United Nations and the African Union, to publicly condemn the suspension of Twitter in Nigeria and to put pressure on the Nigerian authorities to reverse the decision. In the meantime, a former lawmaker, Ned Nwoko, has thrown his weight behind the recent Twitter ban by the federal government. The lawmaker, while speaking to a cross-section of reporters in the country's federal capital, Abuja, says the ban is a move in the right direction. He says the company has taken advantage of Nigeria's large youth population without empowering the youth of the country. He also adds that when Twitter registers in Nigeria, as demanded by the federal government, they will be mandated to pay taxes and create jobs, for which will, in turn, improve the country's economy.
On the current issue with Twitter, I actually wholeheartedly support the position of the federal government. It is not right that they can operate in Nigeria or any other country without any form of control. Many Nigerians will be employed, gainfully employed. They will not employ you and not to pay you properly. They will employ you and pay you the same way they pay the colleagues in America. So that will affect the level of income and status of a lot of people who will seek to be employed by them. If they operate in Nigeria, where we have over 200 million people, or maybe 100 million active users of the various social media platforms, the income that we generate from the present here in Nigeria will not be less than $50 billion. It will not be less than that. In a year, this is the right time for federal government to achieve some international business successes for the benefit of Nigeria.
While staying in Nigeria, 12 persons have been killed while several remain injured in an overnight attack by armed gunmen in Kuru, located in the southern part of Jos, in Nigeria's north-central state of Plateau. Residents say the attacks started around 10:30 p.m. on June 13 and lasted till around 1 a.m. the next day. Plateau State in recent years has been the scene of violent attacks by armed herdsmen and farming communities who retaliate over their cattle being rustled. Now, this recent attack occurred close to the government science school in Kuru area of the state.
9:30, I had a call from one of my watchers here, and this is what is happening. And before I could know, they said, deaths are here on the ground, about 9-10 people. I couldn't move here until this morning I came. I discovered there are so many deaths on the ground.
We can't continue having the same issue repeated over and over. And all we usually hear is that perpetrators will be brought to book. And today, we have additional 12 people that is being added to the book of the people that are being killed on a daily basis. We talk, they said we are talking, we complain, that we are complaining. Where is the solution? As a representative of the people, what will I now tell my people?
Well, still talking security in Nigeria, the police in the economic city of Lagos has reaffirmed that it will never deprive protesters of their rights to freedom of speech, protest and peaceful rally. Now, the command says it is committed to providing adequate policing with the promotion of the tenets of democracy, especially the respect of fundamental human rights. Ijoma Esekalai's report is presented from our studio.
This is Nigeria independence. Yes.
To ensure that hoodlums and assailants do not overpower the police or its formation in Nigeria, like it was recorded in October 2020 during the NSAS protest, the Commissioner of Police Lagos State, Hakeem Odumosu, has guaranteed that the command will provide security for intending or prospective protesters who seek its permission.
NSAS started with a good intention. At the end of the day, those miscreants went into it. Even at the end of the day, it affected those organized NSAS. So what we want is that anytime they want to, they should please let us know. We are going to give them security from anywhere to anywhere. So anybody that wants to protest at any time or whatever reason should just inform police. And I repeat, not to take permission of police. So that where they are right to protest, stop and start. Whatever right now to go about their business, you can stop and start.
This is coming days after the Inspector General of Police, IGP Alkali Baba Usman, warned officers never to allow themselves or their stations to be overrun again, either due to what he described as lack of professionalism or acts of cowardice. Rather, he urged them to improve in areas of crowd control, riot management, and the use of firearms with the acceptable norms of discharging their constitutional duties.
Do we allow our stations and our personnel to be overrun to the extent that we will not be able to handle situations that can easily be handled because of lack of professionalism or cowardice or whatever? We must do in-house training. We must remind ourselves of the laws, the powers in the laws that we have, and how we can discharge them.
CP Odumosu had asked the police hierarchy in the country for security apparatus to combat riots and crime.
Like Oliver tweets, sir, I wish to still appeal to the IGP, sir, so to bless the command with additional 13 water cannons, sir. Sir, we have 14 area commands in the state, sir, and we have 2, and one of the area commands now is on the waterline side. So the remaining 13 will appreciate that I can have one for each of the area commands, sir, because of the population of Lagos.
The police say with the apparatus and adequate cooperation from the citizens, a hijack of protests will not be repeated.
Well, the United Nations top official in Mali has called on leaders within the country to rise above partisan politics and work together to address the crisis in the country. The head of the mission, Gassim Oueni, made the call on Monday during his first briefing to the United Nations Security Council. Mr. Oueni said Mali is at a critical junction, adding that the country should not be allowed to slide into further instability with drastic consequences for the sub-region and beyond.
MINUSMA's support will remain critical in this regard. This is all the more necessary as the security situation in the northern and central part of the country remains of utmost concern. Desperate and frustrating the situation in Mali is, I was encouraged by the resolve of the Malian women, men and youth that I met during my visits to the regions. They genuinely care about their country. They are proud of their cultural heritage and rich history, and they are determined to forge a better future for themselves and their children.
France has strongly condemned the second coup in 9 months. We have taken note of Mali's suspension from ECOWAS and the African Union. The absolute priority must be the organization of the presidential election in February 2022. The Malian political class must now show responsibility as the situation in the country deteriorates, threatening the entire sub-region. It is because this context is fragile that MINUSMAs remain an essential tool, and its mandate should be preserved.
In Central Africa, hundreds of thousands of people remain displaced following the eruption of Mount Nyiragongo in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, the United Nations Humanitarian Agency says that they are in need of urgent assistance. UNHCR says that majority are seeking shelter in towns and villages where living conditions are dire, particularly for the most vulnerable people. The government is now encouraging people to return to their homes as the lava begins to cool, but many do not have much, if anything, to return to. UNHCR says that it will continue to provide shelter, blankets, and other basic needs for the people. Now moving to the east of the continent, specifically the Horn of Africa, Sudan's Irrigation Minister Yasser Abbas says the East African country is open to a partial interim agreement on Ethiopia's multi-billion-dollar dam on the Blue Nile with specific conditions. Abbas told reporters on Monday that the conditions include the signing off of everything that has already been agreed in negotiations. He said provisions have been made to ensure the talks continue even after the filing for July, which the negotiations should hope to aim to achieve, adhering to a definite timetable. Talks overseen by the African Union aimed at reaching a binding agreement have repeatedly stalled. Now, staying in the region, Somalia says it has normalized diplomatic relations with Kenya after it lifted a ban on flights to and from Mogadishu. This was after relations between the two African neighbors tensed up in recent years owing to a maritime border row. Somalia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs called on Kenya to reopen its embassy in Mogadishu. The ministry said Somalia would in turn reopen its embassy in Nairobi. Somalia severed relations with Kenya in December, accusing Nairobi of meddling in internal Somali affairs. Kenya has always denied that accusation. In South Africa, a convicted killer and rapist, Stephen Fortune, has been sentenced to 3 life terms of raping and murdering 12-year-old Michaela Williams of Pelican Park in the Western Cape province. George Robert Henney of the Cape High Court said Fortune was one of the evilest individuals he had come across in his 30 years as a judicial officer. Fortune was convicted and sentenced in 2006 for the child's rape and attempted murder. He was granted parole in 2017. The convicted rapist and murderer admitted earlier this year that during his release period, he had raped 9 other girls. In the meantime, large crowds of people were recorded to have gathered in a South African village in KwaZulu-Natal province where diamonds are rumored to have been discovered. Now, videos on social media showed people digging the ground in search of the precious stones. The provincial government also shared one of the videos on Twitter and expressed concern over the diamond rush. Local authorities have not yet determined whether the stones are genuine diamonds. The National Department of Minerals and Energy is said to have promised to send its team, including enforcement and compliance units, to inspect the site. Now, staying in southern Africa, Zambians have been asked to pray for the country's founding father, Kenneth Kaunda, who is feeling unwell after being admitted to hospital. The call was made in a statement from his office, which adds that his medical team is doing everything possible to ensure he recovers. The 97-year-old is one of the last surviving figures from the anti-colonial struggle of the 1950s. He became Zambia's first president in 1964. Dr. Kaunda, who left power in 1991, has been in hospital several times before. Now we move on to North Africa, where Egypt's highest civilian court on Monday has upheld death sentences against 12 senior members of the Muslim Brotherhood over a 2013 sit-in, which ended with security forces killing hundreds of protesters. Monday's ruling relates to a mass trial of hundreds of suspects accused of murder and indictment of violence during pro-Brotherhood protests at Rabah Adawiya Square in Cairo in the weeks after former President Mohamed Morsi was overthrown. Now, the ruling, which cannot be appealed against, means the 12 men could face execution pending approval by President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Now, many Muslim Brotherhood figures have been sentenced to death in other cases related to the unrest that followed the military's ousting of Brotherhood President Mohamed Morsi in 2013. Now, dozens of African migrants are feared to have died after a boat carrying them reportedly capsized off the coast of Yemen. Fishermen in Yemen's large province said they had recovered 25 bodies in the water near Ras Al-Ahra. Now, the International Organization for Migration says it is verifying the reports. In a tweet, IOM says its teams are on the ground and ready to respond to the needs of survivors. Now, still ahead on the news, Nigeria records no COVID-related death in 10 days as the country records the lowest number of cases since April of 2020. We bring you details of this and many more after now. Welcome back. Now, the news continues with updates on the coronavirus pandemic. Now, latest figures by the Nigeria Center for Disease Control have shown the West African country has not recorded any COVID-19 death in 10 days, keeping the total death toll at 2,117. The figures posted on the NCDC website on Monday also showed the country recorded 7 additional cases of COVID-19 across the country in the past 24 hours. This is the lowest since 11 cases were recorded on April 15, 2020. The new cases were recorded in 3 states. The NCDC said the new infections take the total infections to more than 167,000. Now, 344 new COVID-19 infections were recorded in Kenya on Monday, taking the total number of confirmed cases above 175,000. The health ministry said the new cases were found from a sample of more than 4,000 tests carried out within a day. It said the new infections resulted in a positivity rate of 9.4%, up from the 5.7% reported on Sunday. Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe said 11 more deaths were recorded after the audit of facility records in May and June, pushing the toll to 3,421. He also said 151 patients had recovered from the disease. The health authorities in South Sudan say they have vaccinated more than 16,000 of the country's 13 million people against COVID-19. An official of the South Sudan's health ministry disclosed this on Monday after the country started its vaccine program 2 months after it received its first consignment of doses from the COVAX facility. South Sudan has so far recorded 115 deaths from coronavirus. Now, South African pharmaceutical firm Aspen Pharmacare has said it will release a fresh batch of Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccines in a week to bolster the country's vaccination drive. The company on Monday said the company had further doses of J&J vaccines under production that will be available to the government in July. In a statement, Aspen said 300,000 doses of the vaccine would be produced for South African teachers. South Africa's vaccination drive faced a setback on Sunday when its drugs regulator said as many as 2 million doses of J&J vaccines could not be used after a U.S. Food and Drug Administration notice. Aspen had ready the doses for release from its local plant before that news broke. Now, in Zimbabwe, the government is reintroducing a lockdown as a way to contain rising coronavirus cases in the southern African nation. Vice President Constantino Chiwenga said complacency had led to the recent spike in cases of the COVID-19 disease. The last 7 days has seen 596 new cases and 26 deaths compared to the same period in May of last year, where 132 cases and 6 deaths were reported, although he did not indicate when the new measures will be reviewed. He says only 30 people would be allowed at funerals. Now, in line with the tradition of the World Health Organization, Africa joins the rest of the world to mark this year's edition of the World Blood Donor Day. But like many developing countries globally, Africa suffers greatly from a poor culture of blood donation owing to funding difficulties, collection, distribution, and use of blood for a healthy population, amongst others. News Centre's Omolola Ololade has more on this.
Every year on June 14, countries around the world celebrate World Blood Donor Day. The day aims to create awareness across the world about the need for safe blood and to thank blood donors for their voluntary life-saving gift of blood. With the theme, Give Blood and Keep the World Beating, this year's campaign highlights the essential contribution blood donors make to keeping the world pulsating by saving lives and improving others' health, while reinforcing the global call for more people all over the world to donate blood regularly.
I started donating blood, I think, around 2015. I always donate blood on my birthday, actually. That's one of the things that I do, and it's an amazing experience. The feeling of knowing that you're helping someone else takes over everything you're doing.
The more free blood we have in our blood banks, whenever anyone has an accident or ever an emergency, there will be available blood. And you know that we all have different blood types. So as many people as possible that can donate blood does that.
Don't have any particular reason. And my thoughts were that just like myself, I could get sick at any point and blood would be needed. And any of my family could get sick and blood would be needed. So donating blood is my own way of saying, let this be there in case someone needs it.
However, experts expressed their concern towards Africa's poor culture of blood donation while correcting several misconceptions and myths surrounding blood donation in the continent.
As a medical doctor who have had to manage patients in emergencies is when someone, including those that believe in those myths or not, when they have emergency where they are losing blood, the only thing they need to leave is blood. And if that blood is not available, their life will really be threatened. People are usually reluctant everywhere in the world to give out their blood. Some feel they are giving a part of themselves, by donating blood. But yes, we can say because here we don't have substitutes, especially in Nigeria. In some countries, they have substitutes. They can take blood and extract different components of it, and they can use that even when they don't have blood. But here, we have mainly just to give blood when it's needed.
The importance of blood cannot be undermined, even though it can only be stored up for a limited time. Hence, the need for a steady supply of donations by all and sundry. Omolola Ololade, reporting for News Central.
We really need to give big thanks to all those blood donors across the world. Well, when the news returns, we'll take you to Iraq, where authorities have exhumed the remains of the victims of one of the country's worst massacres carried out by the Islamic State. Join us again. Iraqi officials have exhumed the remains of 123 victims of one of the worst massacres by the Islamic State. DNA samples from the mass grave near Mosul will be compared with those collected from possible relatives in an attempt to identify them. The victims were among more than 600 mostly Shia Muslim inmates at Badush prison who were killed by IS in 2014. The militants drove them to a ravine and shot them dead after attacking the prison and freeing their fellow Sunnis. Some survivors told UN investigators that they immediately rolled into the ravine and were saved by other bodies landing on top of them. Canada's Attorney General has approved terror charges against a man accused of killing 4 members of a Muslim family with his vehicle in London, Ontario. Now, police have said 20-year-old Nathaniel Veltman intentionally targeted the family because of their faith, running them over in a premeditated attack. Mr. Veltman also faces 4 first-degree murder charges and 1 attempted murder charge. He has not yet entered a plea. The next court hearing has been scheduled for June 21. 3 generations of the Afzal family were killed, leaving just a survivor. A Kenyan businessman, Chris Kirubi, is dead. He was 80 years old. Until his death, Kirubi was the chairman of Capital Group Limited and director of Centum Investment Company. Now, his family said he died at his home after a long battle with cancer. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga has paid tribute to the dead businessman, describing him as a dedicated entrepreneur and philanthropist who helped scores of Kenyans over time. Now, it's time to check out the latest trending stories, and for that, we turn to Seun Bankole of our digital desk.
It's a brand new week on NC Trends, and we have sizzling gist as always. So it turns out that 2 of Nigeria's biggest music artists, Davido and Wizkid, aka Big Wiz, might not be at loggerheads after all. In fact, many believe that it's the fans of these artists who fuel their beef and instigate them against each other, such that whenever Davido is in the news, die-hard fans of Wizkid use it as an opportunity to hype and trend him as well. So just this morning, we saw a video of Davido and his friends dancing to Wizkid's 2011 single, Wiz Party. You know that song? You must be a superstar. I know, I want to know who you are. All right, so not long after, we saw Wizkid vibing to Davido's K-Star with South African artist, vocalistic, that says, Kowale. It goes down over just collect. All right, so those videos have been online and they've been trending on social media, and we have some comments and reactions from fans on Instagram. Let's check some comments online. Mirabel_Aduba put out this comment that reads, it can be possible that they have reconciled safe and they no go tell us. Silverlin says, see OBO and Starboy. I see OBO and Starboy releasing a song together soon. That day, all music platforms will crash. Gather here if you believe. And then she puts 2 hands up in the air. Finally, we have this comment at the King007, and it says that Wizkid and Davido's fans are the problem. Do you agree with that? Okay, we move away from that to Tanzania, where President Samia Hassan has urged the country's central bank to prepare for wider adoption of crypto and be ready for change. In a speech on Sunday, the first female president of the East African country encouraged the nation to adopt Bitcoin, noting that the potential of cryptos is yet to be explored by most of Africa. Let's take some comments on social media. The crypto queen Kenya put out this tweet that reads, if you want progress, put a woman in charge. #women rule, #Tanzania, #women power. Also, we move on to this comment from Shoki. 101. It says, this is big. The global movement has begun and it is slowly accelerating. We will see more of this in the future. #BTC. We have another comment from DML25 and she says that is the right thing to do immediately for all the people in every country. That is a good call. Thumbs up. #cryptocurrency. And that ends that. Now, 64-year-old Zambian leader Edgar Lungu suffered an attack of dizziness at an official ceremony on Sunday in the southern African nation. Lungu, who is campaigning for re-election in August, was attending a Defense Forces Commemoration Day event, which was brought to a swift end. A statement from Cabinet Secretary Simon Miti tells us that the president experienced sudden dizziness but recovered immediately and returned to his residence at State House. Even at that, this report has got Zambians talking online. Let's check some comments on social media. First, we have this comment from MUNGEIP, and it says, this is all human, despite the fact that some leaders are ignorant on their own health. Moving away from that, we have this comment from Blow My Mind, and she says, not that it was required, but I wonder if anyone in his immediate vicinity knew CPR. Finally, we have this comment from Shamek Jama, who says that we wish him a speedy recovery. It's not easy leading Africans into the promised land. Wow. All right, and that's where we wrap things up today on NC Trends. Let's know what you're talking about online using the hashtag NC Trends. Follow at News Central TV on Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more trends. I'm Shion Bankole. Thank you for watching.
Well, many thanks, Show. But now let's go back to looking at some of the key business stories from across the continent. To Lulupe.
Welcome to Business on NC Continental Prime. I'm Tolulope Adileru Balogun. The Kenya Revenue Authority plans to collect 1.7 trillion shillings in tax revenue during the 2021-2022 financial year. This is compared to 1.4 trillion shillings collected in 2020 and 2021 and represents an increase of 16%. The inflow will be from recently introduced taxes such as the Digital Services Tax and Minimum Tax, with reductions in exemptions and zero rating, reductions in allowances and adjustments in excise duties as well. According to Fred Omondi, tax and legal leader Deloitte East Africa, for the administrative side, the increased revenue target means the Kenya Revenue Authority will be unrelenting in its compliance and enforcement efforts. He warns that unless the pace of economic growth accelerates much faster, taxpayers will likely continue to bear a more significant burden as the budget grows to record levels each year. South Sudan says it is committed to repaying the loan it received from the African Export-Import Bank in 2020. South Sudan's President Salva Kiir revealed this during a meeting with a delegation from Afri-Exim Bank led by its president, Professor Benedict Orama, in Juba. Kiir thanked the bank delegation and assured them of the country's commitment to the continued long-term bilateral cooperation with the financial institution. South Sudan said it was seeking a $250 million loan from the African Export-Import Bank last year to implement a long-delayed peace deal, fight COVID-19, and support food security. The bank released the loan to South Sudan in January of this year. Ethiopia has called for expressions of interest for a minority stake in the state-controlled telecommunications company. This starts the process of recruiting a second major investor into the country in less than a month. The investors have a month beginning from June 15th to submit their bids of interest for 40% of Ethiopia Telecommunications Corporation. Requests for proposals will be issued thereafter. The sale in Ethio Telecom comes on the heels of a new telecommunications license awarded to a Safaricom-led consortium last month. This opens up the sector as part of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's plan to attract more foreign capital, create more jobs, and maintain one of the fastest economic growth rates in Africa. Ethio Telecom generated revenue of about 25.6 billion birr about $600 million in the 6 months through December and has about 53 million subscribers. The government will retain 55% of the company, while 5% will be provided to Ethiopian investors, probably through an initial public offering. President Samia Suluhu Hassan has told the Bank of Tanzania to be vigilant amid a rising interest and adoption of cryptocurrencies around the globe. The president agreed that many countries around the world have not accepted or are having digital conversations just starting. Last week, El Salvador became the first country in the world to officially classify a digital currency, Bitcoin, as legal currency. Meanwhile, England, China, and South Africa are in the process of using cryptocurrencies. The Central Bank of Nigeria also recently announced that it intends to launch a digital currency pegged to the naira before the end of 2021. And still on cryptocurrency development across the continent, South Africa's Intergovernmental FinTech Working Group has released a position paper calling for the regulation of the country's cryptocurrency ecosystem. The working group outlined 25 recommendations on a policy, legal, and regulatory framework for crypto assets and related activities. The FinTech group says it does not recommend the use of cryptocurrency and advises caution right now in South Africa. Staying with South Africa, for more than a decade, South Africa's two major public entities, South African Airways and the electricity company Eskom, have been unprofitable. Recently, South Africa's government announced that it would sell a majority stake in the cash-strapped company to a consortium that includes the operator of a local budget airline. With regards to the power company, it was 14 years ago that Eskom introduced South Africa to rolling blackouts and load shedding. The power utility announced stage 4 load shedding, a critical level which has not been seen since 2009. Stage 4 load shedding means a cut of 4,000 megawatts. President Ramaphosa disclosed that an amendment of Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act is being worked on. Earlier on Business Edge, I spoke to Julius Kindhaus, Executive Director of the Organization for Undoing Tax Abuse.
Very same issues. We've seen how the board members and top management in Eskom as another state entity and a lot of the other entities as well were influenced by the wrong, corrupt people. And again, you know, if you don't have the right leaders in place, making the right decisions for the right reasons, and focusing on rather developing the entity itself, these are the repercussions that we sit with. And yeah, the economy is not where it can be. Everyone knows that energy is the backbone of any economy. And currently we're sitting still with load shedding. In fact, it's costing the South African economy billions in a space where about 2 years ago we were in a technical recession before the COVID-19 pandemic, and then the pandemic hit us. So it's really deep trenches regarding the problems in South Africa in our economy, but luckily opportunities are coming to the fore as well. And I think Eskom is a big focus area.
And that's all the business we have for you on NC Continental Prime. I'm Tolulokwe Adileru Balogun. There's more news right after this.
Many thanks to look, and time for us to look at another kind of business, and that's the business of sports. Now, the allegations of sexual harassment have been leveled against a high-ranking official, and he's done the honorable thing. But I think Udoka has more on that. Udoka, how are you doing this evening?
Very well, Salai. And talking about that one now, it's about the FIBA president, that's the World Basketball Governing Body, Hamane Niang. He has agreed to step aside to allow an investigation into allegations of systemic sexual harassment within the Mali Basketball Federation. Now, Niang, who has been FIBA president since 2019, strongly denies the allegations and has taken the decision to temporarily step aside while the investigation is conducted. Now, he has also offered his full collaboration to the investigation. A statement from FIBA explained that it is alleged that Niang knew or should have known about the sexual abuses in the Mali Basketball Federation, particularly during his time at the helm of affairs from the Federation between 1999 and 2007. The basketball governing body also suspended 3 people connected to the FNB from all FIBA activities while the investigation is conducted. Moving over to women's handball now, Nigeria will play host Cameroon in the quarterfinals of the Women's Africa Handball Championship on Tuesday. Nigeria made the last 8 as one of 2 group stage best losers after they beat Kenya 26-21 to finish in 3rd place in Group B. Rafiu Salami's side had lost their first 2 matches against DR Congo and Cameroon, and a win against Cameroon will see Nigeria make the semi-finals for the first time since 1992 and also see them secure a spot in the World Handball Championship in Spain. And in the Nigeria Professional Football League, Kano Pillars have been charged for breaching the league's framework and rules regulation following the infraction in their March Day 27 fixture against Aqua United at the Ahmadu Bello Stadium in Kaduna on Sunday. The Kano club got the charge by allowing spectators and supporters into the venue. Now, Pillars are also charged for encroachment after their supporters ran onto the field of play, thereby disrupting the match. Now, the club are further charged for failing to provide adequate leading to failure in crowd control and restriction of access by unauthorized persons to restricted areas. Now, the club also faced a venue sanction of being banned from their Kaduna home base and subsequently moved to another venue if there's a recurring event. Now, Kano Pillars have about 48 hours from the date of notice to appeal these sanctions. Now, lastly, let's talk about Roger Federer, and that's the world of tennis now. The man made a winning return to the grass courts with a hard-fought victory over qualifier Ilya Ivashka at Halle. Now, the Swede has not played a competitive match on grass since his Wimbledon final defeat against Novak Djokovic almost 2 years ago, but was quickly back in the routine. Now, Federer, who is bidding for an 11th title in Halle, has played only 3 tournaments this year as he returns from knee surgery. He withdrew from the French Open last week, having reached the 4th round, stating that he wanted to prepare for Wimbledon.
Yeah, I missed it. I haven't played a tournament in 2 years on this surface, so it's been. I've done the hard courts, I've done the clay, now I've done the grass. So it's been great being back here in Halle. Love playing here. Just very little crowd. It's obviously a bit of a disappointment, for all of us. But at the same time, like you said, look, I'm excited to be back on the green grass, and getting a win is obviously always very nice.
Well, good win for Roger Federer right there. And that's a wrap on Sport Updates on NC Continental. And I head back to Sulai for the rest of the news.
Well, Duka, thank you very much. Seeing Federer sweating there reminds me of what's to come next. And that has to do with the weather here across the continent.
Yeah.
Temperatures as high as 41 degrees Celsius were recorded in some areas of Egypt today, in line with predictions of meteorologists. Now, the hot weather was experienced during the daytime over Greater Cairo, Lower Egypt and Northern Upper Egypt. Moderate weather was seen along the northern coast and very hot weather on southern Upper Egypt and South Sinai. Now, residents have been advised to walk about with water bottles and always hydrate. Now, our desk has the temperature readout for what to expect tomorrow and ultimately how to prepare for it. Well, that's all on the news at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at the top stories. Now, more than 70 civil society groups have called for the suspension of Nigeria's Twitter ban. UN officials have called on Malian leaders to work together to address the crisis in the country. We told you that Egypt's highest court has upheld the death sentences of 12 senior Muslims of the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can also download our mobile app on the App Store and Play Store. You can also watch News Central live on Star Times, Channel 274, Avio TV, Channel 23, and live on YouTube and across social media platforms. I'm Sulaiman. Many thanks for watching.